There we go. NFL Insider makes shocking case. Shocking case. This current head coach would make sense for the Jets. So what are they talking about? We got Matt Higgins over here. Looks like what he looks like. NFL Insider makes shocking case. So what's the case? Here's Aaron Rodgers. It's not the season the New York Jets envisioned. With a healthy Aaron Rodgers heading into 2024, the Jets were hopeful to be Super Bowl contenders. They are anything but, he says. They're currently 3-6 as they head into their Week 10 matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. And because of their struggles, Woody Johnson got all up into his emotions and fired Robert Saleh after his loss to the Vikings. More information about this. So they're saying this is what we could do. The Athletics' Jeff Howe suggested a shocking name that the Jets might pursue. The Dallas Cowboy head coach, Mike McCarthy. Now, why would that happen? Well, the Cowboys are probably going to fire this guy, I would say, after the season, and probably going to hire, I think, in my opinion, Bill Belichick. Billy Belly. I think Bill Belly goes to the Cowboys, and I think Nick Saban is his defensive coordinator. One last ride for those two. And McCarthy will be out on the street. Now, should we pursue Mike McCarthy? After all, McCarthy was Aaron Rodgers' former head coach at the Green Bay Packers. And the pair won a Super Bowl together, if you remember, back in the day. And so it might make some sense because I think Rodgers and Davante Adams are coming back next year for us, like it or not. And then you go and get his head coach. Now, they could also probably, stick it out with most of this coaching staff. You probably don't even have to get rid of almost all the coaching staff. And I'll explain why that is. Then Howe wrote, the Jets should sell out for Ben Johnson, but we're not getting Ben Johnson. But he's been highly selective, and he will be highly selective per other reporting. He's not going to take this job, Ben Johnson. Neither will Mike Vrabel. So you got to get a guy who has who doesn't, is not going to be the hottest name in the world. McCarthy has some success. He's had success with Rodgers. Rodgers would love him. Rodgers is going to be here. So it makes sense. Now, if you look at Mike McCarthy, what he's all about. Now, he's a Pittsburgh guy. You may not know that, but that accent he has, that's a Pittsburgh accent. So he's a Yinzer. And in 1992, early 90s, he was on the University of Pittsburgh staff. So why does that matter? Well, there was another man on that staff. Who was that other man, you might ask? Who was his mentor? Paul Hackett. Sound familiar? Paul Hackett is the father of Nathaniel Hackett. And so there's a connection between the Hacketts and McCarthy. And so McCarthy also runs the same offense that Rodgers is used to, the same one that Hackett ran and that both Paul Hackett and Nathaniel Hackett run. And we all know Rodgers loves Nathaniel Hackett. So you don't even have to fire Nathaniel Hackett because I think probably Mike McCarthy would want him on his staff, at least as the quarterback coach. And you probably keep Todd Downing as the offensive coordinator, and you just have Big Mike, and Big Mike would call the plays. So you change the play caller and person primarily working with Rodgers, and you probably don't even need to fire anyone on the offensive staff unless McCarthy really wants to change out, for example, the offensive line coach. That'd be all right. But you have a connection between Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy, Paul Hackett, and therefore Nathaniel Hackett. So it's not a terrible idea. Now, people are probably not going to like this idea, but we got to open our minds. Yeah, see, people are already not liking this. Phil says, isn't Mike Mack a yesterday's man now? Maybe. McCarthy will 100% not be coaching Rodgers. They were bickering at the end. I don't think so. I mean, there was reports of that, but you wonder about that. I mean, we've seen Rodgers be prickly with everyone sometimes. Jets need, at the very least, on the coaching staff, new offensive coaches. Bring back Rex Ryan, right? Two winning seasons out of 6. He was the best. He was so awesome. 2 winning seasons. I thought McCarthy and Rodgers were on bad terms. You wonder about that. So that's obviously something that would have to be looked into. You got to ask Rodgers, like, what was going on there? Maybe it was poorly reported. We don't know. Harlan says Paul Hackett was Jets OC. Yep. Jets offense did good enough to make the playoffs then, right? And we weren't satisfied either back then with what he was doing. We thought he sucked. Good morning. Hope everyone is doing well. Aunt Jet says. So this is one idea that maybe could work. Rodgers would have to obviously agree to it, and he'd have to say, yeah, that was the media made that out to be something more than it was, or whatever. Or if he goes, yeah, I'm not working with that idiot ever again, then he's not coming here. That's it. Right. So we'd have to see about that, but there are connections. And, even if there was a problem, perhaps at that time, time heals all wounds. You'd have to check it. Maybe it was just who knows? You got to check in with Rodgers. If he says no way, all right, then you move on to the next guy. But we got to understand that we're probably not getting the best of the best out there. Vrabel not coming here. Ben Johnson not coming here, I don't think. So we got to be creative in our thought process. So wait till you hear about this one. I got a super creative idea. All right, so this was suggested by the press. Makes some degree of sense. They run the same, McCarthy runs the same kind of offense that we already run. He has familiarity with Nate Hackett. Probably don't need to overhaul the staff. He just comes in, becomes a play caller. If he can get along with Rodgers, then it makes a lot of sense. If not, then it doesn't make sense, obviously. So what about this? How about this for a creative idea? Now, this is a creative idea. Get it in your head. We got to think creatively. We're not just going to hire the best of the best out there. But there's a man who's related to another man, and his name is Jay Gruden. What if we hired Jay Gruden to be the head coach? And you say, who's Jay Gruden? Obviously, he's the brother of Jon Gruden. Has coaching experience. He was Washington Redskins head coach 2014 to 2019. Offensive coordinator all over the place, the Bengals, the Jaguars, etc. So he's an offensive guy. And he's not coaching right now. But here's the creative part. You look at Jay Gruden, and then as the head coach, and then you say, okay, we're going to also hire Jon Gruden to be a special assistant. And so this way you get Jon Gruden in the building with his brilliant mind, along with his brother Jay. Now, Jay does not have all of the baggage that Jon has with the NFL, with that whole thing that they looked into him and had to get rid of him. He had to resign. And then you get Jon Gruden in addition to Jay Gruden. You get the Gruden boys. Now, Jon Gruden would have to obviously drop his lawsuit and do a couple other things before the NFL would let him come back. But you say, we're just hiring him as a special assistant, whatever. He's not going to be an official coach. He's not the OC. He's not the head coach. He's just here as special assistant to the whatever title you give him. That way you get a 2-for-1. You get Jon Gruden, the Gruden Grinders, and you get Jay Gruden. And the reason that would appeal to Jon Gruden, it's his way back in. He agrees to drop his lawsuit. He agrees to make a public statement apologizing, whatever he has to do, whatever they determine PR-wise, and he gets on a staff, our staff. And it's a way to get Jon Gruden really in our building with his mind, his offensive mind, the way he coaches, which I think we need. He coaches with grit and toughness, the Gruden grinders and all of that. So this is a creative thought of how do we get Jon Gruden basically on this staff. So that's what I think. I think we got to take a look at some of these creative things. So who knows? Now, Eddie says, what about Rex as a DC? Now, Rex as a DC, I would be all in favor of. The only problem is we would have to completely rework the roster. So Rex Ryan runs a 3-4. We run a 4-3. It's not to say it can't be done, but we would have to completely reorganize the roster to the types of players that Rex wants. Now, does Rex want to be a defensive coordinator? I watched a podcast, the Pivot podcast with him. It seems like he wants to be a head coach, although he did interview for a couple of DC jobs over the last few years. But it seems like he wants a head coaching job. Would he take the DC job here? He might. I mean, I definitely want to talk to him because Rex as a DC is perfectly fine for me. As a head coach, no. And as a guy who has say over the personnel, no, absolutely not. That's his downfall. But as a DC, he's perfectly fine. He's good. I'd have him as a DC on my team any day. Arlen says, no, Jay Gruden. Well, I think we should at least talk to him. Jon Gruden can work out a deal. Well, maybe he can. Maybe we don't. I mean, he's got a lawsuit against the NFL that's proceeding in the courts. So maybe not. We don't know. It's a little tricky. Gruden, Ryan would be the best combo. That would be a good combo. And we got to start thinking creatively because we're not getting Mike Vrabel. We're not getting Bill Belichick. We're not getting, Ben Johnson. We're not even going to get Joe Brady or anybody like that. I think Woody is kind of poisoning the pool here. You got to get guys who, have a little bit of tarnish on them, who may have different motivations. Like Mike McCarthy, for example, would probably just be like, all right, this is the last stop before retirement, and maybe we can make it work with him and Rodgers. And you get at least a decent, NFL coach. Remember, Mike McCarthy, the last 3 years, other than this year, 12 wins with the Cowboys. And now they fell short in the playoffs, one time embarrassingly so, in terms of the Green Bay Packers blew them out. And then the previous year, they had that crazy game at the end where the ref didn't touch the ball and time ran out and all that. But that's playoff craziness. I mean, 12 wins. It's not bad. It's not bad. I don't think Rex could flex to a 4-3. I think his whole philosophy is around linebacker blitzing. I don't think he wants to play a 4-3. I could be wrong. Maybe he would, but I don't see it. I don't think so. Now, Rex does want to come here, Tony, as a head coach. He definitely does. So if we interviewed him for a head coach, he would definitely take the interview, and if we offered him the position, he would take it. So that's what we need to see is, would he come here as a DC under Jay Gruden? I don't know. With Jon Gruden on the staff, he could probably look at that as a decent situation where if he's a DC for a couple of seasons and we have success, then maybe he can get a head coaching job somewhere because he desperately wants to be a head coach again. He thinks very highly of himself, you could say, as a head coach, despite his poor record. So, yeah, he definitely wants to come back. So that's something to consider for sure. But I'd prefer him as a DC. He does not have a good track record as a head coach. He only has 2 winning seasons out of 8, 6 with the Jets, 2 with the Bills, and only made the playoffs twice, which was his first 2 years here. But that was with a team that was constructed by, Mangini, basically, and Tannenbaum. All right, so that's the coaching situation.
This is the Frankie from Flatbush Channel, where you get complex data analytics, funny as hell, and insightful commentary, in-depth film studies, and so much more. What are we talking about here? fucking subscribe already. How much value do you really want to get before you just click the subscribe button? It's free, for God's sake. Hit the bloody subscribe button right now so Frankie can feel the love. For fuck's sake, man.